Let's first work on one of these corner pieces. Maybe this right here. This is the front one. So this is it here. This is it from another angle, and this is it from more of a top angle. You can see that it's got a little tab coming out of it here. It angles down at the bottom, and it's got this curve here. So once again, because this is a relatively complex shape, I think I want to begin with a polygon plane just because it's easier to extrude and move points around when it's just a two-dimensional object. And then once we have that shaped the way we want it, then we can add thickness to it with the solidify modifier once again. All right, let's give this a try. So once again, let's go to the side view and let's hit the Z key for wireframe. And I think what I want to do is just create a polygon plane and begin shaping it to this right here. So let's do that. Let's press Shift A, polygon plane. Once again, I'll press RY90. I'll hit the S key to scale down, and let's bring it here and try and figure out where we want to begin. How about we begin right in here, like this? Something like that. And then we can extrude up to get this piece and extrude down to get this area here. Now, this right here looks kind of curved in the drawing, but I'm really seeing in the reference images here that this is more of a squarish piece, which is good. That'll help us use fewer points there. That's good. So, okay, let's come back up here. Let's tab into edit mode, hit the 2 key to go to edge, select, and now let's just begin extruding this up. So there's a couple of ways to do this. I think what I'm going to do is just extrude straight up. I'll hit E and click and then extrude straight up to here. And then what let's do is let's add an edge right here, and let's try and just move this out like this to about right there. Now that we have that, let's create a few edges and then pull these in to kind of get a rounded shape there. So I'll press Control R, and then I'm going to scroll the mouse wheel to maybe get 3 edges here. And then I'll hit the 1 key, and now we can take each of these and kind of move them back to match up the reference image, kind of like this. So we get just kind of a hint of a curve there. Now, you can, of course, add more if you want it to be more of a clean curve there, but I think that's probably a good balance between detail and poly count. So now let's come down here and select this edge, and let's extrude on down to maybe right here. I'll hit E and click, and then drag in the Z-axis on down to, well, let's go on right down to here, I guess, like that. And then let's hit E and click and drag down to here. And then I'll just grab this point right here and just move this all the way into here. Now, is there a curve there? Does it seem to curve? It really doesn't. It seems to be a straight edge right there. So I'm just going to go ahead and leave it there. It kind of seems like it curves in the drawing, but in the views over here, I'm seeing a pretty much straight line. So now let's get this here. I'll insert an edge loop right here and pull it down to right there. And then we should just be able to hit E, click, and drag out with the Y-axis. And I can't tell if it looks like it might go in a bit. So let me press S and Z and scale on the Z-axis and just kind of bring that in just a little bit like this. There we go. All right, let's see what we've done here. I'm going to tumble around and let's bring it out and put it somewhere out here. Let's try and figure out where it's supposed to be. It looks like it's fairly far out, and it looks like the whole piece, well, it's difficult to tell from this angle if this hides behind there, but it looks as if the whole piece is pretty much outside of the cab. So let's take a look at the back view. I'll press Control 1 and I'll hit the Z key and go to wireframe. And it looks as if right about here is where that is. This is another piece right here. Let's see if they have one of these. Yeah, this thing right here is this. So we don't want to line it up with that. I think this right in here is what we want to line it up with, right there. Well, let's see. Let's tumble back around, go to solid mode. It seems a little far out, but let's see how it works. Now, what do we have to do for this piece? Oh, here we go. Let's take a look at this. This is a good view of it. So now we have to take it and extrude this edge back toward the cab, and then it has this kind of angled shape here. So let's work on that. I'll tab back into edit mode and I'll press Alt and click this edge, and that'll select that whole edge there. And so now let's extrude and push in the X-axis. So I'll hit E and click, and then I'll click this X-axis and drag it in about like this, I think. And then it angles in like this. And how do we want to do that? It looks as if it angles right here below that backdoor top hinge here. So let's go to the side view and take a look at where that is. So there it is here. If we add an edge loop right underneath here, Control R and click, and maybe right there, that's maybe where it's going to angle out. Okay, so if that's where it's going to angle out, what we could do is move our pivot point for this object. In edit mode, we could move it to this point right here, and then just rotate it in the y-axis out. We would have to pull the bottom point down a bit to get it to be flat on the bottom, but let's at least try this. So with this selected, I'm going to move the cursor to there with Shift-S and the 2 key. Now I'll change my pivot point right here from median point to being at the 3D cursor. So I'll click 3D cursor, and now let's select these points down here. Let's go to the back view again with Control 1, and then we can press R and Y, or just R now. Since we're in the back view, it's only going to be able to rotate in the Y-axis anyway, since we're here in an orthographic view. So I'll just push R and tilt this out a bit like this, like that. Let's give that a try. Now, this is curved up a bit because we're rotating from this point. So I would need to take this point now and drag it down a little. I've got the cursor up here, recall, so I'm just going to move the cursor back to the median point, and there it is. And then I'll just drag this down so it's kind of parallel with the ground plane there. It also looks like there's just a bit of a lip there too. We need to extrude that out. So let's do that. Let's select this point, and then I'll control click this point, and then I'll select all the points in between. And now let's extrude and pull out in the Y. So E, Y, and I'll pull straight out like that. Maybe like that. Let's try that. Okay. Now that we have that, we just need to give it some thickness. So once again, let's use that solidify modifier. But first, before we do, let's apply the scale. If we hit the N key and open up the sidebar, we can see our scale is uniform, but it isn't ones. Let's press Control A and apply the scale here. Now you can see those are all ones. Now let's come over here, go to Add Modifier and Solidify. There we go. You can see the thickness there. I'll click on Even Thickness. And then I'm going to hold the Shift key down and click and drag in the thickness field. And I want to make it pretty thin. I mean, these are pretty thin pieces here. Maybe something like that. And if I go to the side view, let me just make sure it's where we want it to be. Yeah, it's pretty much in place there. Okay, well then let's just mirror it over to the other side. Now, once again, if we open up the sidebar, we see there is rotation here in the y-axis. So what does that mean when we add a mirror modifier? Well, let's try it. Let's go over here, Add Modifier, Mirror. And look at it there. That's not exactly what we want, is it? So let's press Control A and also apply the rotation. And that kind of gets it in the same place, but look at what I've done. I've left the origin here in the geometry instead of moving it down to the center of the grid. So let's first of all move the cursor, Shift-S 1. Then let's move that object origin with set origin and origin to 3D cursor. And now that piece pops over here. So there we go. We've got that first corner piece of the back. In the next video, let's start working on the back corner piece as well.